Hello and welcome. In this video, we will show how to complete a database test data query configuration for the gQuery that was created in the previous lesson. So how do you configure database queries? This involves 4 steps. First, you need to create a database test data query, configure with either query before or query each. This step has already been completed in the previous lesson. Next, you need to configure the query parameters, and then enter the database query. Finally, you need to add domains and attributes for the real data to populate. There are 2 types of database queries: query before and query each. The query before query type will query columns from one or more database tables as a set of data that is buffered into memory. The query each query type will query one row of columns from one or more database tables on each iteration of test data generation. There are 3 database query configuration components. A test data query configuration has the following primary components: parameters, which define the resource path, subdirectory, name, and variables. The query, which defines the actual query to be performed on the database. And then domain attributes. Domain attributes define the attributes that will be populated by the real data obtained from the SQL query. As a prerequisite, you must have a database connection properties file. A config.properties file must be available on your local computer to connect to the database and perform the query. The properties file contains the database connection information, and its location should match the defined resource path within the query parameters. For this query, we will be querying an address table within a MySQL database for the address domain within our project version, which contains 4 attributes: address 1, city, state, and zip code. Let's get started. The first step will be to configure the query parameters. You will need to add a resource path if one is not already there. You can also change this path by double-clicking on the field. For this example, we are going to reference the resource.jdbc.directory organization resource. Your config.properties file can be located within a subdirectory on your local machine. For this example, our config.properties file is located within a subdirectory titled config. And finally, you must enter the resource name. Our resource name is config.properties. The buffer size, set loop, and query once parameters are set by default. You can make changes to them, but we will not be making changes for this example. Once finished, click the Save button. The next step will be to add your database query. Click on the field and enter the query. For this example, we will enter select street, comma, city, comma, state, comma, zip underscore code, and hit enter from address, and then click Save. Once you have configured the parameters and entered your query, you will need to add domains and attributes. This can be done within the domain attributes section by clicking the Add button. You will select the domain. In this example, it is address. You will select the attribute. For this example, we will select address 1. And then you will enter the column name as it is within the database table. For this example, the column name is street, and click Save. We will need to complete this step for each column that is part of our query. We will click Add again. Address is already selected. We will select the city attribute. Our column name is also city, and we will click Save. We click Add again, and we select the state attribute. Then we enter state, which is our column name, and click Save. Finally, we click Add one more time, and we select the zip code attribute. We will enter the column name as it is in the table, which is zip_code, and click Save. Once you have added each domain and attribute, you will click the column check button to perform a validation. If everything is correct, you will see this notification. Click OK to close it. This completes our configuration for our SQL database query. Once the gQuery has been created, you can download the query by clicking on the cloud icon within the Action column. It can be run with a downloaded scenario, scenario chain, or scenario chain set. The command line is displayed at the bottom of the dashboard. This command line will change depending on what query has been selected. It is very important to make sure you have selected the query that you want to run the command for before copying this command line. The command line can be copied and pasted into a command prompt or terminal window. Once you have pasted the command line into a command prompt or terminal window, you will need to replace scenario name.grs with the actual name of the scenario, scenario chain or scenario chain set. For this example, we will use address scenario.grs and hit enter. The command has successfully finished. gQueries can also be added to an individual gcase. We will show how to do this in lesson 5 of this training module. For now, we will show the generated data as well as the data that was queried from our MySQL database table. On the screen, you will see 2 images. On the left is the delimited file that we generated when performing our query. On the right is the data that is in the address table of our actual database. As you can see, each record contains the same information. This concludes our tutorial on configuring a database test data query, or gQuery. In the next lesson, we will show how to configure a CSV file test data query. Thank you for watching.